Well, let's start today by asking let's just suppose kind of a question. Suppose you had severe diabetes and the doctor said to you, I'm sorry, but you're probably going to have both your legs cut off. Your kidneys are going to fail. You'll have to be on dialysis. And yeah, by the way, you'll have to be injecting insulin several times a day the rest of your life. And oh yeah, probably you'll have your life shortened by at least 10 years from what you would have if you didn't have this terrible diabetes. That wouldn't be a very happy prospect, would it? But let's suppose that he said to you, but there is a way you could turn all that around and stop having diabetes and you'd have no complications. You get to keep your legs. You'll never have your kidneys fail. You'll never go on dialysis. You'll never have to take insulin. You're going to live happily ever after until you die of old age if you eat one meal only. And here's my instructions, and if you follow this to the letter, diabetes will be a thing of the past. You skip breakfast altogether and just have some coffee with some cream in it, maybe a little butter. And then for the other two meals, you eat the same identical meal the rest of your life. You eat a large hamburger patty, no bun, just the hamburger patty, and you have green beans. Large hamburger patty and green beans. That's going to be your lunch for the rest of your life. That's going to be your dinner for the rest of your life. But if you do that, all the complications of diabetes will be gone. You will not have a single one of them. Question, would you do it if you were convinced he was right? If you were convinced that by eating a large hamburger patty and some green beans as your lunch and dinner the rest of your life, diabetes is a thing of the past, no worries, no complications, no neuropathy, no amputations, no kidney failure, all is well, and you get to live to a ripe old age, would you do it? The answer, of course, is if you've got any sense at all, you would. And you'd be glad to do it. I would in a heartbeat if that was the only option for beating diabetes. And you know what? That is an option for beating diabetes. That is a diet that would whip diabetes thoroughly. Hamburger patty and some green beans for 2 meals a day and no third meal except maybe some coffee with some butter and cream in it. But guess what? There are a whole lot more options as well. You get to eat a lot more foods than that. So if you say, well, I would, if I knew that would do it, I would eat that single meal the rest of my life. If you say that, then you ought to be glad to know that there are so many more types of foods. So the other day I was at Walmart, snapped a bunch of pictures, taking pictures like crazy, half worried that some Walmart employee or manager would come up and say, what are you doing? Nobody did, and so I got a lot of pictures. Some of the good guys and some of the bad guys. And we've done a couple of programs like that already, but we're going to go on to some more of the good and the bad guys. So let's get started. The very first that I want to share with you, the first food is a good guy, or actually a couple of good guys, and that would be salmon and canned tuna. Canned salmon and canned tuna. And some of you are saying, yuck, I don't buy anything out of a can. Well, that's your option. But the truth is, even in a nasty old can, tuna and salmon have essentially no carbs at all, which means no blood sugar rise, which means no insulin surge, which means you've just gone through an entire meal and the hours that follow without any problems. And you're on your way to beating diabetes. Now, here is a food that people love to hate. And I have to be honest, I don't think I've ever eaten a sardine in my life. Not a can of sardines, not a couple of sardines, not a single sardine. They just look nasty. They smell nasty. And the idea that I might be eating some guts or some sardine heads or some sardine eggs, the whole thing just turns me off. So they're not going to raise your blood sugar. Animal products essentially don't raise blood sugar. But I found there are ways to beat diabetes without eating sardines. But if you like them, enjoy them. They are not going to raise your blood sugar. Now, here is a great class of foods, the nuts. I just love nuts. As much as I hate sardines, I absolutely love nuts of all kinds and every kind. And yeah, that includes the peanut, which I know is technically not a nut, but it looks like a nut, it acts like a nut, it tastes like a nut, has about the same amount of carbs as most nuts. Some are better than others. The one nut you want to avoid at all cost is the cashew. It's got like twice as many carbs as most other nuts. So, but most nuts are not going to be a problem, except if weight is an issue for you, then yeah, they can be a problem because they are high in calorie and you just can't hardly stop eating them, which eventually those carbs can add up to where they do produce somewhat of a rise. But the good thing about nuts is, number one, they don't have a lot of carbs, and number two, what carbs they do have, they release gradually because they dissolve gradually in your stomach. So nuts are essentially a safe food, but you got to watch them, especially if you're having trouble with weight and you're a couple of 100 pounds overweight and you know you need to get it down. I wouldn't advise eating many nuts, if at all. On the other hand, if you are slim and skinny and you say this keto diet is making me skinnier still, then I would encourage you to enjoy nuts and eat them regularly. I have to confess that when I was new in the things of low-carb eating, I had the idea that if something said 0 carbs or very few carbs, it was safe, no questions asked. So I just assumed that any kind of sugar, artificial sweetener of any kind, would be fine. Didn't matter what it was, whether it was Equal or Splenda or whatever. It had to be better than sugar, and I stand by that. It does have to be better than sugar. But I didn't realize that there are some ingredients in some of the artificial sugars or the artificial sweeteners that can raise blood sugar. And I hear from people all the time about this. And here's an example. It's called stevia in the raw. And you might think, well, stevia, that's a good thing. It's relatively natural. And yet stevia, this kind of stevia, has maltodextrin in it, which is a blood sugar raiser. Many people have reported that to me. So when you see the bag stevia in the raw, you assume that's nothing but stevia. That's stevia, the whole stevia, nothing but the stevia. Wrong. It's got other stuff in it, stuff that can raise your blood sugar. So you got to be careful with the kind of stevia that you want to use. And you want to try to avoid maltodextrin at all costs. A single packet of it, let's say you're at IHOP and you order a coffee, put some cream in it, but you think I'd like it a little sweet. One single packet of stevia or Splenda or pretty much any other thing is not going to be a big deal. I'm not such a purist that I demand 0 of anything except the pure keto stuff. But if you start having things like large amounts of stuff like this stevia in the raw, you're probably going to have some problems, and it's not going to be as easy on your blood sugar as you thought it should be. Well, here's a product near and dear to my heart, sliced almonds. I use these in low-carb pancakes that I have usually at least once a week, if not more. And I like to mix in some sliced almonds. Also, I make my own version of low-carb cereal. Sometimes I'll take a store-bought keto cereal, and then I'll mix some unsweetened coconut and some sliced almonds and maybe a couple of other types of nuts and add some water, and I'll have my own version of cereal that is not going to affect blood sugar much, but I like those sliced almonds. So sliced almonds are my friends, and I eat them often. And here are some more friends, chia seeds and flax seeds and hemp. These are all products that have carbs to them. But the thing that makes them safe for me anyway is that it's almost all fiber. When you're looking at chia seeds, you're getting about as many fiber grams as you are carb grams. The same with hemp seeds. And the same with flax seeds. I mean, they're just jam-packed with fiber, which means theoretically, at least, they shouldn't raise your blood sugar. Now, I say theoretically for your sake. I already know they don't raise my blood sugar. But I've had enough people leave comments and say, yeah, they raise mine, that I'm not going to give an unqualified badge of safety for everybody. You test your blood sugar after eating these. But for me, they don't do anything. And chia seed pudding is one of my favorites. I enjoy eating that. So that is a good type of sort of a pseudo cereal, and I'll put some nuts in it, maybe a couple of strawberries, and I'm good to go. Maybe a slice of cheese to go with it. Here are several types of flour that should be safe for most diabetics. One is, of course, our good old friend almond flour. You find that in so many recipes, almond flour. Coconut flour is another one. I enjoy coconut flour pancakes. I'll usually mix a little almond flour with it. When I first presented the coconut flour pancakes, I had some people ask me, well, couldn't you substitute almond flour instead of coconut flour? Yeah, you can, but there is something about almond flour that tends to burn easily. So if you're making almond flour pancakes, you better stand right at that stove. And you better watch it, and you better time it down to the second and flip it over at the right time. You flip it over too soon, the whole thing falls apart. You flip it over about 30 seconds too late, and it burns. Coconut flour pancakes are much more forgiving, and you can go away to your room and come back, and if you're within a minute or two, you should be good. So the coconut flour pancakes are a little safer. When I was younger in these things, I would always have soy flour, and then all the keto guys started talking about how nasty soy flour is, and I kind of drew back that, plus the fact stores hardly carry it anymore. But I confess that I just actually recently, I ordered some soy flour and have soy flour pancakes, and I like them. So I know people have all kinds of wild accusations, but in my first probably 14 years in low carb, I was having soy flour pancakes, soy flour muffins, soy flour waffles, and probably some other soy flour products, and didn't seem to do me any harm. So if you're going to have low carb pancakes, you need some kind of a syrup, at least I do, and this is one of my go-to low carb syrups. It does have sugar alcohols in it. And too much sugar alcohol can be a problem. It can give you diarrhea, for one thing. And for some people, it still raises blood sugar. For others, not so much. And for me, it hasn't been a problem. But I'm always trying to be careful with how much sugar alcohols I ingest, because if you don't watch it, you'll be mixing sugar alcohols with all kinds of foods and recipes and low-carb snacks, keto desserts, and so forth, and you'll get too many and then be ready to spend a lot of time in the bathroom. And here is one of the good guys, olive oil. There was a time when I never used olive oil for cooking for one reason, and it took me a while to become a convert, but my one reason was it was so much more expensive than vegetable oil. I could buy a big bottle of vegetable oil for $2.50, $3, and olive oil, I buy a small one for about $5 or $6, and it's more now these days. So it's not cheap. And I will admit, I was a holdout. I held out for a long time, and finally I put out the white flag of surrender and said, all right, I've heard enough of these guys that I respect tell me how nasty seed oils are. I'll go with the olive oil and coconut oil sometimes, but typically olive oil. Okay, here is one aisle you want to pass right on by, at least for the most part, and that is the cereal aisle, breakfast cereal. I've always loved it. It is not my friend, and it will raise blood sugar like crazy. Even the natural ones. I mean, a lot of times we're tempted to say, sure, I don't want the tricks. I don't want the brightly colored cereals. I don't want the sugar frosted flakes. I don't think they call them sugar frosted. They just call them frosted, and they leave you to figure out that they've got sugar in them. So, we say, I don't want those, but I'll eat the more natural cereals that are made from grains. I'll eat the granola. It doesn't matter, my friend. Unless they say keto, they are bad news for you. Even the keto cereals can be problematic. And I've gotten to the point where, I'll still buy keto cereals. The problem is actually twofold. Number one, they're incredibly expensive. Again, you can buy regular cereal for $3 to $4. You buy keto cereals, they're about $8 these days. It's ridiculous, just because, and I don't think it costs them all that much more to make them. But anyway, I will go very light on keto cereal. What I'll do is I'll just kind of cover a bowl at the bottom with the keto cereal, and then save it for next time and next time and next time. And then I'll add some of those sliced almonds and some unsweetened coconut and maybe some pecan pieces and different things. And so it'll be partly keto cereal, but mostly other and more natural ingredients that I will add, and doesn't seem to be a problem. So be careful with the keto cereals if you can even afford them, but they can come in handy. And I have to admit, it's kind of nice if you're in a hurry and you haven't bothered to make any kind of a meal and suddenly it's time to eat, to go to the pantry and pull out a keto cereal and pour it in a bowl and add a few ingredients, pour in some heavy cream and some water or some almond milk and a slice of cheese, and bam, you've got a meal. So very, very convenient, but probably not something you want to be doing every day or even every couple of days. All right, well, these are just some examples. So again, going back to our illustration we used at the beginning, if a doctor came and said to you, I can guarantee you'll beat diabetes if you'll just eat a hamburger patty every meal and green beans. If that was what we felt was our only solution, we'd all jump at it. But guess what? There's all kinds of wonderful foods. Yeah, you're going to have to give up some things. I'm not going to kid you. But there are so many choices, so many options that you can live well, you can eat well, and thoroughly whip diabetes. If you've recently been diagnosed with diabetes and you've just discovered this channel, let me recommend that you go to our Uploads page, which will give you access to every diabetic video we've posted since we began. As you work your way through all our videos, I believe you'll find the help you need. A link to our Uploads page is in the description.